Welcome to Land Language, the podcast transforming landscapes from toxic to regenerative. We're your host, Brit from Blueprint Earth,
and co-host Bethany from Bethany Rydmark Landscapes.
We explore beautiful, functional design through conversations with scientists, vendors, contractors, and designers who are changing the industry.
Whether you're in the field or at the drafting table, join us as we explore regenerative practices that care for people, place, and planet.
Let's dig in.
Oh, this is a fun day. I'm so excited. We have Jenny Jones from Terremoto joining us from California across state lines. We're here in our Zoom world and having a conversation around materiality and construction in the design build world. I'm so excited for her to meet Brit today and for the three of us to get to have this chat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a joy. I've admired your work for so long from afar and never reached out to chat. You know, we're all so busy in our worlds, but there's something that harmonizes with nature when you see the work that you do. And it's clear that you push the lines of materialism and you really draw vision from nature itself. And it seems that the way that you design connects people to the earth and kind of takes what they see and gives them a built environment that inspires them to feel a sense of beauty in watching the way that the ecology and the different species that live within the land flourish and harmonize together. And so with deep admiration, I'm excited to hear from you.
Wow, you guys, that's really beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm kind of a nerdy roots girl. I kind of want to ask you to start out with, like, where did your roots in this whole world of landscape start? Do you have memories going deep back into childhood, or how did you start to grow in this world?
I think for me, I as much as I'd like to say, oh, you know, my parents were hippies or I grew up on a farm, my parents were sort of hippies, but they were also tax attorneys that worked for the IRS. And we lived right outside of DC. But I think for me, the love of nature started because like my parents had government jobs. And so then they would get really good vacations. And so we would go a month to Colorado or to a barrier island off the coast of Virginia called Chincoteague, where we would just spend a lot of time out in nature. And I was little and I was the youngest. My parents sort of, the youngest of four, my parents would sort of forget about me and I would just roam and have a lot of free time outdoors. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't, necessarily being trained as a child in how to steward land, but I think just having that time, like free, youthful time with two very different wild landscapes when I was young, that of the mountains and the Eastern Shore. Yeah. Is really what shaped me and has led me to have the values that I have today of stewardship and care for the landscape. So that's like the deepest roots, I think, for me. And then I studied, my older sister was really into recycling and composting. It was the 90s. It was like greenwashing time, the beginning of like greenwashing time, corporate greenwashing time. And that was another thing that just really inspired me. And then I went on to study environmental science, and I got a degree in environmental science and a degree in environmental thought and practice, which was a really fascinating degree at the University of Virginia, where I studied everything having to do with the environment outside of science. So it was like theory, literature, history, politics, policy, and then I dabbled a little bit in urban planning and landscape architecture through that interdisciplinary major. And then I actually was a science teacher for a couple years.
Oh, were you really? Cute. I had no idea. What grade level?
I taught middle school science. I did Teach for America in Oakland, actually, and taught 7th and 8th grade science there. And then I also I moved back to Virginia when that tenure was over, and I taught 6th grade science in my hometown of Arlington. And yeah, that was fun. Although I God bless all the teachers in the world, because that is, that's a very hard job, being with children all day and also trying to teach them managing a classroom. I will say, like, the classroom management skills that I learned, I think have been invaluable for me moving forward in dealing with people. Like Bethany, you're talking about, how to kind of stand up to clients and stand up to contractors and just whatever, stand up for what we believe in the world of our profession. And strangely, I actually think some of the skills I learned as a teacher in communicating and like dealing with large groups of people, I think come from that. But yeah, then I went back to school for landscape architecture back at UVA and got a degree there in landscape and also urban and environmental planning. And from there, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love hearing it.
Because I loved hearing, Brit, your story of kind of how you came to it before we officially started the podcast. We were kind of talking, and it's very different from mine, and yet here we are in similar places. And so, people's journeys are always so different. I find that really interesting. But I was very swept up in landscape urbanism, right? That like buzzy word thing from, the aughts and the 2010s in the world of landscape architecture. Very caught up in like, big systems thinking is going to save the world. And landscape architects, we're superheroes. And we're going to say, I have found this magical profession where I can swoop in and I can be Captain Planet, right? Which was really like my life dream. I just went like, you guys, did you watch Captain Planet?
Of course.
I'm aware.
Okay. Just making sure. So I got very swept up in that. And, kind of the sexiness of the renderings and the 3D axons pulled apart and all the diagramming and the kind of complex visual representation of these like urban environmental problems that really dominated our profession, I think, for a long time. I was like really swept up in that, like doing competitions and, applying to work at the top firms. And I'm glad I did that because it definitely taught me, and I went and worked at a big firm, which was really wonderful. And I learned kind of how to do landscape architecture as it's done in the big firms. And I learned about, all the standards of our profession and its intersection with construction. But, Bethany, I think we've talked about this, and you probably know this about me, is that just that whole system on a whole really needs to be critiqued.
Absolutely.
And I think that just meeting people like you who have small practices, I think, I just really want people to know, especially students of landscape architecture and like young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed people who find landscape architecture and get all excited about the possibilities. I just would urge them to embrace the small as well. I'll leave it at that for now.
No, it's fantastic. I'm curious because, of course, your studio now with Terremoto, the size of operation that you're running and the teams and the scale of projects and the places where you're finding your influence to shape the land and help people recognize their opportunities to choose materials and plants and scales appropriately. How do you find you've settled into that era of your life, and what are you finding as the real, I guess we could go both directions, like the places to continue to learn and grow versus the places that are feeling like a sweet spot where you've identified like this is really promising, this is feeling like the kind of work that I'm proud to be doing. Maybe we should go in the positive direction first for a minute, because I really want to hear, like, for all the things that are a struggle, where are we actually finding success in guiding people in a great direction? Where are you finding that with Terremoto?
For me, some of the biggest joys are in the really small projects where we actually are working more. We have this term garden coaching in our practice. I don't know if you guys ever take on projects like this where,
a little bit, where it's
bit.
more of a relationship to help them make the thoughtful choices here and there as they're tending for a longer period of time, right? It's not a start, stop, build something and be done.
Exactly. And I really love those projects because they are just they're very different from the norm of how we build projects, which is based on a capitalistic model of like fixed fee, start, finish, you know, it's over, now the contract's over. And land just doesn't work that way. You know, nature doesn't work that way. And so it's so, it's such a contradiction for just the way that we work in our profession and the way that even like our contracts work. You know, that is such a contradiction with Earth systems and cycles of nature. And so, yeah, I love the projects where our contracts are kind of more open-ended. We're hourly. We give them a low rate, and we're more just kind of consulting and coaching, and not spending a lot of time on the computer. More like, you know, I'll produce a light hand sketch for somebody, give them rough quantities, send them on their journey. And then I'll come back, you know, 6 months later or a year later and check on their progress. And yeah, those I think are some of my favorite projects. And then also I would say for me selfishly, we've been wanting to do more and more ecological restoration, even though that's a very loaded word that you could also do a whole podcast on, just like how do you define that word? But projects that are actually like, so the previous projects I was talking about tend to be, you know, very small scale, little city postage stamp projects. But we also have some clients that are fortunate enough to have larger pieces of land and they want to heal the land, and helping those clients do that as well has been really rewarding. But what was your second question?
Well, I guess I was thinking that you could go in the direction of the positive, what are we loving, then go in the direction of the still, like where do we have progress to continue making? And maybe that's where we can start to angle, because some of the chatting that you and I've done offline has been around materiality and around even just the concrete conversation over time, even just watching our industry in the last 5, 10, 15 years go from tiptoeing into a conversation around, hey, maybe we should change our direction in this, you know, in this particular area with materials choices, to now I feel like we're more and more invested in finding alternatives to traditional concrete installations. But there's a lot to learn. And what are the downfalls? What are we learning good lessons about? What are we still needing to sort out? You know, with recycled material especially, I think there's a lot to say about the idealism of that, and then what's the practicality of sourcing and installing recycled and found things, and how does that change the flow of you know, kind of you alluded earlier to this capitalistic model of like the one and done, here's the design, here's the fee, here's what we're doing, and it's over, and everything needs to be very buttoned up and understood because that's how it's efficient and everyone makes the money and they walk away. Versus actually, what does it mean to like slow down and take assessment of what you have available? What would be wise and thoughtful to use? What does it mean to labor in a way that is fruitful and, you know, non-exploitative? Again, these are like 5 different podcasts to have.
Yeah. Big questions here.
Materialism. Like, where do we still have progress to make? Where are those pain points, and what are we trying to peer into the future and see what we can keep improving? Like, I kind of want to land over there.
I was thinking about this, like last night as I was falling asleep, I was trying to like mentally prepare myself for this podcast and I was trying to do a good job.
Thank you.
And I sort of had this thought, like, it's really sad that we have to have this conversation about like, why are we still not succeeding at being, you know, if economical in our material usage? Why are we still, as a culture and as a profession, having to like beg people to recycle? Essentially, that's what it is, and it's really sad because people have been doing this in their gardens. There have been like little, you know, niches of people doing projects in a recycling-minded way for forever, right? But those projects are not sexy, and they don't win ASLA awards.
I mean, permaculture can be sexy if you put a good designer behind it.
Right. And I think that's like our whole thing, is we're trying to make it sexy. I mean, that's not like literally our mission, but but we are trying to bring more visibility to it and to convince, you know, the culture that being modest and being conservation minded is cool. But yeah, it sometimes feels weird even talking about it because people have been doing this forever, right? This isn't new. This isn't like, oh, I have this new idea and let me share it with you. It's like I'm recycling and borrowing the ideas from lots of other people who have been doing this kind of work forever. But it still is, it's not the norm. And I was also having this thought about how I think technology is part of the problem here. Tech makes everything smooth and slick. And the more tech kind of rules our lives and our culture, I feel like the more slick I see things becoming.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's I think what we're fighting against. We see it in our, we have our Bay Area office and we have our LA office. And something that comes up every now and again is the difference between the clients, between those two regions. And we see in the Bay Area a lot more desire for slickness.
Is that grandeur? Like large, big installations that feel monumental in the way of like a scale that is like a Medici garden, like something that really like grounds you in awe? Or is it like the desire to have monoculture and more hardscaping?
I think it's maybe more the latter. It's like people are still obsessed with modernism and think that modernism is the answer to everything. And for them, that means slick and clean and tidy and monotone. And I think that's what we're fighting against with our trying to push people for material reuse is obviously you're not going to get that. You're going to have, a collage. But we're just trying to, and I think especially down here in our LA office, our Bay Area office rather is trying to push it more and more. And try to change the culture up there even more. But it's a fight because, just the culture at large, I don't know, isn't interested. I mean, what do you guys think that's about?
I mean, I think that commercial, large firm landscape architecture, and you look at the places where tech spend their days in commercial landscapes, which are not often designed with the intention of ecological systems and managing stormwater and building soils and creating habitat. I think that when you just look at the environment that they are, curated within as the people they are supposed to be, I think that they're just looking for a reflection of that to feel important and to feel like the importance looks like what they're shown is good.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think there's the ability to have a narrative and to say, even recognize with those clients, potentially say like, hey, I know that this is what you think looks good, but let me tell you how much cooler you can be. You can be a true ecological badass and talk about not just keeping up with the Joneses, but being the new Jane, Right. Yeah. I mean, do you have to shame clients into doing the right thing sometimes? I feel like I always try to inspire clients into doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So, it's when I think about like, I've spent time doing Tony Robbins programs since I was 16 and I'm in his business mastery. So I love what it's taught me, even though people have so much judgment around that, is like the raw works. And when you lift people up and when you say, look how awesome you're going to be. Do you see this version of yourself that's doing this? Do you feel what that will feel like when you get to share that knowledge and support other people to be inspired and you're actually helping make a difference? I feel like people are like, yeah, I want
No, it's to be a cheerleader.
Yeah. And it's a choice. But, I think as leaders in our clients' world, we are given that opportunity to help guide them and steward them into what the coolest version, because they're hiring us because we're cool, right? We do beautiful work and it looks great. So how do we make sure that they are the cool kid like we are?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm thinking about your comments on tech being part of this problem too, and I'm laughing and rolling my eyes a little bit at myself because my own history in the field is that I graduated from a school in an era where it wasn't super strong digital drafting tool training, and it wasn't super strong analog hand drafting training. It was kind of just like, well, here's what they've done, here's what we're kind of learning to do. Go out there in the world and learn. And then I spent 6 years at a studio where we did entirely hand drafted plans. And so I spent 6 years in the early 2000s, right? Like learning how to connect to the idea of design still with a pencil in hand and producing these, genuine articles of human creation that we would, do the sticky back labels on and run through the copy machine and present to clients.
Yeah.
And it's charming and strange to think about now, but I also am so grateful for that piece of my own practice because it's come forward to this day. I still love that our studio produces hand drafted early stage drawings. Of course, we're in CAD by the time we have to get things fully detailed. But I do find that, in my experience interacting with designers and people, where it's the click of a mouse to draw the lines, to make it sleek, to show something quick and give someone a vision for how their garden could look, it does really very quickly feed into this clean line, build it up, make it simple, and it's sleek and it's so cool and rad, and there it is, and it's done. And I do feel like this, I want to be thoughtful about my words. We're living in a wild age. Things are changing so fast around us with technology at the rudder here. What does it mean to keep reclaiming the humanity of thought, the humanity of practice, the humanity of construction, the humanity of maintenance, and not just maintaining to control, but maintaining to be knit together with and being alive in our spaces? And the aliveness of a drawing that still has some unresolved, interesting corners in it, great. Or the aliveness of, all right, well, this plant's going a little rogue, and that's okay because the whole design isn't predicated on everything being polka dots that match, or whatever. I guess I'm just reflecting on the identification of an impact. Like, I don't want to sit here and completely vilify.
No. I mean, it has its place. It's a tool. But no, you can, I can see it sometimes when I see designs, on people's websites or the internet or whatever, and I can see, oh, that was designed in SketchUp.
Right.
For sure. And that's why it's a concrete monolith. Because it literally, like, that tool is like sort of imagines like a fully plastic world where everything is just push pull. But like, that's not how the world works. But yeah, I can always tell when something was designed in SketchUp versus when something is more intuitive or, built on site or built, kind of by hand or by analog. There's, you can always tell.
I feel like in the practice of design build, like there's that opportunity because you're seeing things from the perspective of knowing that you have to actually get it built with your guys, or if you work with the same contractor over and over, that how the capabilities and the critical path they might need to take to get materials to where they need to go, what they need to take out, what they need to bring back in. And really the capabilities of the land. I feel like often we find a lot of frustration when we take on other designers' projects that it's not thought through in terms of a construction process.
For sure.
And it's really challenging. And I know, it's kind of what makes us a unicorn when we're design build firms is that we're designing from the aspect of building it. And when I think about the materialism of a site and what I try to teach our designers as they come in and they're green to us is that, we're designing from what the site can, how the site can be related to the end product. And I think that a lot of times drives decisions and takes things out of CAD. So like for us, for instance, the first site measurement day comes with a can of spray paint, and we're spray painting out where things are going to land based on not just what we think they should be, but how the land is telling us it can work. And I think that's common. I don't think it's abnormal to respond to the land. But I do think that when there's that responsibility of having to be the end creator, builder, you really understand, you really have to think about your limitations and your opportunities.
And I think that that's part of the problem in our profession, is that most people in our profession are so disconnected from the build and from the labor side of it. And that's why it's part of the inspiration for why we've been so vocal about labor in general. I mean, there's a lot of other threads to that conversation that I could tease out as well, just in terms of us trying to bring more visibility to labor within the profession. But I commend the design build practice, and I would like to see more of an integration in our profession between the design and the build side. Because I think everything you're saying, Brit, is so spot on. There's plain and simple, there's a disconnect. And so our schools are training all these designers to work in a bubble and in a vacuum, and they don't understand the physicality of the hands putting the thing together on site. And it's obvious in the design.
Yeah, it makes it tough. And luckily, we have such a great labor force in America that are usually willing to figure it out,
Yeah.
But I want to bring this back to materialism, because I feel like that's where your work really, for us as like an outsider looking in, really just like anchors. And like, if I want to extract some juicy knowledge from you, Jenny, and I'm like so curious about like how you choose what you choose and why you choose what you choose. And I know that it's probably based on a lot of local aspects, but I'm curious what the factors are that go into choosing your site materials in your design.
Well, thank you. I do feel a little shy about this topic. I was, trying to tell Bethany, like, I'm no expert, we kind of do what we can. I think, so I'll speak to it the best I can, with the little asterisks that like, I'm no expert, and we're just all sort of doing our best. But I would say we're blessed being in Los Angeles, in regarding material reuse, because there is so much to draw from. People are demolishing and throwing a lot out, unfortunately, right? As like one of the centers of capitalism in our country, right. The amount, the number of like renovations and rebuilds, and it's churning all the time. The machine here, the churn of the machine is strong. So there's a lot to draw from. There's literally just a lot of urbanite everywhere. And I think probably like early days of Terremoto, that was not necessarily at the forefront of the kind of the guiding principles, but over time, it has grown in our mind over time, just simply from opening our eyes and looking around and seeing what's available, and not liking the feeling of loading up a dumpster of concrete and seeing it go to the landfill. So it's just sort of through our lived experience of being in this center of materialism, honestly. I think that's probably part of it, right? Like, we live in LA. It's a materialistic place. I know that's a cliche, but it's also true. There's a lot more depth to it. There's a lot of really, like, the native plant community here is really strong too. So there's a lot of other pluses to living in this community.
As a native Los Angelina, I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So I think we've been really lucky. It's been growing and growing, and we've been really lucky in the past couple of years to now have a yard where we can store materials. That has like totally changed the game for us, right? Because it's the logistics of working with recycled materials that I think is one of the biggest barriers. If you don't have a place where you can store materials, it's really hard to like collect them when they show up. And then, hold on to them. And so, because as you know, timing of projects is always unpredictable. Right. And you're not, so I think that's a key, is having actually like a physical place where you can store materials. I guess I would be curious. So that's been a big game changer for us. And that has allowed us to sort of push it on our clients a little bit more, or, Brit, I'm liking just what you said earlier about inspiring your clients. And so trying to show our clients how cool it is. So now we have our clients, come to our office and they can literally look at the piles of materials. And so that has been big for us. But I'm curious, how do you guys do it in your practice? Do you have a material yard where you can store things, or how do you find the logistics playing out for material reuse on your projects?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a yard, so we do bring back rocks and pieces of flagstone that weren't used, or flagstone that we're pulling up that they wanted to, change for whatever reason. We don't store urbanite. I always bring it to a yard and they crush it, and then we end up they take it for free, and then we rebuy it to use as our substrate in patios. Mostly because I haven't found a way that I feel is a beautiful way of dealing with or working with urbanite. So I'm super curious your favorite ways to work with it, and like what sort of scale you like to have it at to be able to work with it.
I struggle with urbanite as well, and Bethany and I Bethany tried to reach out to me a little while ago and wanted all my thoughts on urbanite, and I was a little bit like, I don't know. I know that urbanite is kind of the favorite, the poster child of material reuse, and we do use it, but I kind of agree with you, Britt. It's not easy to work with, and we end up using it mostly, for ground cover treatment. I mean, I have seen people do beautiful things with it, reusing it in artful ways to make walls, but I think it requires a lot of skill and craftsmanship to artfully mortar what has a very irregular underside.
Definitely.
Together so that it's not wonky. So that's why we usually just hide that underside and put it on the ground. That's the way I feel like we use it most. What about you, Bethany?
I mean, it's interesting because we don't have a yard. We're not doing the construction, and we don't have a source of space to be able to harvest from past projects or hold on to things for the future. There are some wonderful local sources. I'm thinking about like Lovett Deconstruction, the Rebuilding Center, and there are places that are locally doing their best to help harvest this material and keep it in play. But from our perspective, it's just, we're a small studio, projects are moving at different paces. You're trying to just get things planned for and executed on. And it's difficult to not have a more straightforward way to understand what is currently available, how much of it there is, how much we could use, how much of the unknown we can help a client stomach, right? Because this is not you can't just point to an example. Well, here's what it looked like last time we put it in.
Right. Right.
There's a lot more trust involved and a lot more hopefulness that you can find what you're looking for. So I'm speaking to it mostly as a theoretical at this stage, feeling like there's less available than I would like to be able to draw from. My mind is going to this recording that some colleagues and I watched together. It was from a past ASLA presentation, and it was 3 different folks presenting on various forms of reuse of materials. And one focused area was on France's. I mean, they legislated change that requires a certain amount of reused material, and they have a system of cataloging and resourcing, so you can go and understand what's available. Granted, they've got beautiful old cobble and old granite. I mean, the materials that they have are incredible based on
What's
the
there.
region and the history.
Yeah.
But I was also just wildly impressed to think about, oh my goodness, what if there was the effort made to make the space to hold on to these things, to catalog it in such a way that people know how to access it and understand what's available. And then also, people are incentivized to use that material as a certain percentage of a project or what have you. And so even if we can't be operating on that scale, I'm wishful at the local scale here in the Northwest, like how can we have a little better understanding of what's around? How can we use it more effectively? And work with contractors. Again, since we're not doing it ourselves, there's this the next layer of communication with the builders to say, hey, you're not just going to run down to your supply source and go grab X, Y, and Z and put it in. We actually are thinking about
We're specking it. Yeah. Well, it's just like a cool opportunity, right? And like through this podcast, we've gotten to learn a lot. Like we had Lynn Morgan of Sustainable Northwest Wood come on and talk about FSC certified wood. And specifically in the Northwest, we get to utilize juniper, which is kind of a nuisance species in Eastern Oregon. due to how it's changing the water flow and the water tables and impacting native bird habitat. And so, knowing that, and then knowing that harvesting is also supporting the local tribes, we can start to calibrate the sustainability of harvesting that wood in contrast to harvesting cedar, right? And it's not a financially more expensive to choose that. It's just about knowing that that is a choice and starting to spec that as designers and spec it as contractors as an opportunity. I recently joined a group of other landscape contractors, and we're calling ourselves the Oregon Regenerative Alliance.
Nice.
It's like 6 of us, construction firms and designers in Portland, which means you should join too. And we're looking into this, right? So like Carver Rock has decomposed concrete, right? So we're using that as our base instead of like quarry 3/4 minus that came from a quarry, right? Like that's just an opportunity. We're looking at permazyme. It's not checking out to do so hot in the Pacific Northwest, but I think it could be a really interesting product for LA and drier climates.
I'm going to be ignorant.
What is it?
I don't know what this is. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so you create like a soil. You create a soil pathway, and instead of putting in another material on top of it, excavating, right, and then creating the elevation change needed to create, a walkway of gravel or whatever. It's permazyme is an enzyme that's placed on top of the soil, which then creates a hardened surface, hard enough to drive on. So, it's the choice of choosing the color of soil is something that's beautiful, which in LA is beautiful. It's a light tan.
Right.
Yeah. It's DG
Well, that's
almost.
what I'm always on every project. I'm always trying to just match the color of the soil.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to know about this product because it is strange. I do find it strange sometimes to be on site on a project or with a client, at the beginning of a project and starting to talk about materials and just how deeply ingrained it is in everyone's minds, the architects, the clients, the contractor, everybody is so ingrained in let's go shopping.
Right. Let's take it away and bring something new in.
Yes.
The other one that I think of that I'm really interested to see, there's a company out of Colorado called Prometheus, and they've developed a carbon sequestering paver. So the application will be like a concrete paver, right? And there's probably 5 companies that have done this. It's successfully being used by a company, I want to say in Virginia on the East Coast, that has done some projects in Europe and then a couple in the US as well. But I always also like to think about the shipping aspect of getting materials to us. So this company in Colorado, what they do is they actually sell their chemical components to specific concrete paver making vendors. And then you can go and purchase an amount, at a minimum of these concrete sequestering pavers from those different vendors. So having a yard makes it a privilege, right? If we can get a minimum order, then we're good. So for us, it's really just starting to understand those opportunities and starting to implement them within our construction process, as well as trying to cut and fill, right? And not disturb soils that have a good microbiota within it. But that's kind of the tip of the iceberg for us of trying to put things into practice.
I have a question. Did you guys ever come across this Instagram account called Repairscapes?
No.
I don't think so.
It is now defunct, but you need to look it up. And I keep meaning to track down whoever started it and beg them to restart it because I do think what our profession needs. I mean, we need a lot on this topic, right? Like you said, we need coalitions within different regions to kind of support each other in the logistics of this endeavor because it is a logistics question largely. But I think we need more and more also to just change the conversation and the culture that we're still not even there yet. Like there's still so far to go on that. And what I loved about this account was they were looking across, all projects, and they were highlighting and celebrating landscape architecture projects that were more about repair and care than about redesign. And so they would take, there was one of my favorite ones was just a little streetscape, a little kind of wide walkway that, the planting was old and tired and the paving was kind of, falling apart and from the 80s and didn't look cool. And they just kind of messed with it a little bit. They, literally cleaned up the planting, right? You don't have to rip it out and start over. You just clean up the planting. And they modified the edge of the paving to allow for just a little more planting. And then they planted some more understory and they just gave it a refresh. And I really just wish that our profession was more, as a whole, saw our work could see our work as repair and care rather than designing the world. And start this starting from scratch thing, because, they talk, when you read about kind of wilderness and wild spaces all across the planet, they talk about there's not really a lot of wilderness left. We have been everywhere. Our influence has spread everywhere. We have invasive species everywhere. We just have to kind of acknowledge, right? We're in the Anthropocene. And, so shouldn't we shift our mentality on design? We've designed this world and it kind of
it sucks.
Say it.
Yeah, there's parts of it that really suck. We kind of screwed up.
And so in fixing it, the metaphor I like to say is your body. If you mistreat your body, by eating wrong or indulging or whatever, what does the body need? It needs repair and care. And we're not going to get a new body. I mean, I guess some people can if they have enough money. But it's the earth is our body. And as landscape architects, we're the stewards of that. And I just think I would just love if our profession would operate more under that mindset. And so, yeah, I'm just really sad that this Instagram account went away. And I don't know why it went away. Did it go away because it wasn't popular enough? Did the person get tired? Did the person have a baby? I just want to know what happened. Where did it go? I want to bring it back.
Yeah, let's find out for a reboot. It sounds amazing. That's
try
a
to
mission.
Get them on the podcast. Whoever you are, reach out.
Yeah, I really want to see more of that, celebrating that kind of slowness, and seeing our work as an act of repair and care.
I have a question from you from a just practical spec perspective. So where you are, I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of the disturbed lands from the fires. And a lot of your clients are those clients. So you're probably showing up to sites that I'm assuming went from a beautiful garden to naked earth to probably a lot of weeds and random things starting to grow in. When you're showing up to what looks like a meadow, but it's really just a bunch of weeds, how are you starting that landscape over without scraping it or poisoning it? Or what is it that you're doing to choose how to mitigate?
We're still very much in the middle of figuring that out, because feasibility is really the question. And I mean, I think in general, our approach is we're trying to take a repair and care mindset approach, trying to heal the soil. But as you know, with bioremediation, there's never an away, right? So even if we were to use phytoremediation to heal the soil and to pull toxins out of the soil, then that has to be harvested and landfilled, or and so we actually we haven't figured it out. We're still figuring it out. And I think because time is part of the equation too, right? We're still kind of watching, I think, and especially because of our seasonality, our intense seasonality here, and the fact that we haven't had rain, a real rain. We've had little dribbles, but we haven't had a real rain, for 6 months, just because it's been summer, and that's normal. We kind of need full year cycles to see, does the rain wash some of these things away? Does the soil heal itself? We've done a lot of research, and I can't speak to it myself. There's actually some others in our office who are really leading this charge of researching how to pull toxins out of the soil through phytoremediation or simply applying compost. There's a lot of people just saying, like, if you just apply a lot of compost, a lot of times the soil can actually heal itself.
That makes sense.
There's people doing mycoremediation with different fungi. But we have not figured it out yet. And I feel like we might need to check in probably in a couple of years. Honestly, I think it's going to take time. It's still pretty fresh. You know, the fire happened, we got some rain. I would say the like anxiety in the city is, you know, definitely like down from where it was, but we're still kind of in the middle of it. We haven't figured it out yet. We haven't had enough time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of exciting, but it's also kind of scary. Another big thing we're trying to do is save trees, because a lot of trees are coming down. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are assessing trees and saying, oh, that tree just needs to come down. And we're trying to push and just tell people, like, wait, slow down. That tree might actually be okay. We really just need a lot of time. And that's just not in our culture, the time aspect, the slowing down.
Yeah, especially when it's
true.
People's homes, you know, they want to live in their space again.
They move on. They want to clean up and move on.
That tree conversation reminds me, we might have even said this on another episode of the chat, but the ice storms and things that we've experienced here in the Northwest in the last couple of years have really terrified people about their trees as well. And they're trying to preemptively take out a threat that they, you know, imagine could come down. And they're taking down, in some cases, really valuable, important trees. And we can't just overnight plant a new tree to take that place. It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. So that, the scale of time and impact is so important, and we get a voice to try to help calm people down and be thoughtful about where and when we make those kinds of changes, and recognizing that it's not an overnight. You don't just to like an architect and a builder, you know, you can erect a building in a short amount of time and ta-da, it's there, it's full size. But to replace a landscape feature, organic
the tree conversation, I just want to mention too, and maybe we can take a minute to talk about recycling green waste, right? Because there's the, you know, the conversation about hardscaping materials and recycling those things and trying to be modest in our use of those things. But I've been really interested in the green waste recycling conversation as well, just because, it's the norm. You know, a tree comes out, get rid of it. We're going to mulch that whole thing and take it somewhere else. And we've just been on our projects more and more trying to find creative ways to reuse green waste as well. And I'm wondering, has Hugel mania hit the Pacific Northwest?
I feel like it's been here.
I would say so.
Yeah, it's been there.
Like the Permies are run large here.
Yeah.
Hugel, but I think people are coming around to the fact that chip drop is a good idea and that it's aesthetically pretty. So using what you may have had to chip from your project or a neighboring project as your mulch instead of buying something that comes from the logging practices can be beautiful, and you know, starts yellow but turns silver, and has a bunch of leaf material in it too, and you know, is a valuable source of a lot of nutrient.
Yeah. We have a project, I don't know if you've seen this one on our website. It's called Oak Woodland Trails, and it's, you know, it's a big property in Beverly Hills, and there's a couple acres, and there's beautiful kind of oak woodland hillsides, and we were building these trails on it. And I can't say that project is like a model of material reuse, because we did bring in stone to help us build those trails, stone that from offsite. Mm-hmm. But there was a shining diamond of a moment on that project when an oak tree happened to fall, and rather than have the guys chop it up and carry it out and have it mulched or whatever, we decided to do an experiment in just using it right there. And so we were literally like building our trail near this oak tree. And so they cut up the oak tree, we sliced it up, and we used the slices to build the walls for the trail. Mm-hmm. And it has performed so beautifully, I just have to say. And the client was a little worried, you know, what's going to be the longevity of this wall, and how's it going to perform? And it was such a fun moment of like a serendipitous moment of material reuse, which I feel like often that's the thing about this whole conversation, actually. I feel like the best examples of material reuse, I feel like, tend to be pretty serendipitous. It's sometimes forcing it and saying, like, I want to do a collage project, right? I'm going to go look for all these materials, can sometimes feel a little forced. And I think if there's anything that maybe listeners take away from this conversation, it's that, like, we're not going to be perfect on all of our projects, but look for opportunities. And when you see those opportunities, capitalize on them and be open in your design thinking to maybe, like, change your design. So we changed the design from the trail on this trail from stone to wood, and it has ended up being really beautiful. And actually, there was a little bit of earth movement on that site recently due to some faulty engineering up at the house, not on behalf of the landscape architect. And there was a little landslide, and the earth literally moved around and under, and this wood wall, the stacked wood wall, stayed in place.
Wow.
And performed so well. And the client was like, yeah, you said it was going to stick around, and here it is. Like, it was very stable and beautiful. And we barely had to move the tree at all. You know, we just used it right there. So yeah, I love sharing that story as an example of material reuse of, like, I think those are kind of the most beautiful examples of material reuse when it's not designed. And I'm sure, Brit, you experiences on your projects, especially because you're design build. You guys, do you feel like you get to improvise on site?
Yeah, I always say design is 90%, and there's 10% that has to get figured out when you're building.
Yeah.
Because of those kinds of things. I wish I had such a cool story as that to share, though. That's pretty amazing.
You can borrow it if you want.
I'll say Jenny's story.
Yeah.
I feel like there's like three things that kind of land in my mind from this conversation in terms of pieces I want people to really anchor into. I hear that design as a whole, which really informs construction. We, as contractors, we don't get to build anything unless somebody has handed us a really beautiful stack of papers that tells us what to do. But that designers have a really big responsibility and opportunity to learn about resourcing materials, to learn about soil building, and to inspire their clients into making choices. And I want contractors to also know that when you receive a packet of designs, or you don't, you just receive a client, that you have the opportunity to inspire clients and to be a steward in learning about what's in your area and understanding wood chips, understanding urbanite, which is just broken concrete, guys, and some other opportunities that might be things like permazyme or carbon sequestering pavers as things that are out there, and that they're just not going to be found at one landscape material yard. You might have to go into a few places to kind of do the things as we're suggesting and hoping to inspire you to do. And that when these serendipitous things happen, or you find materials on site, like Jenny's story just told us, to see it as an opportunity to maybe call up your designer and say, hey, we just had an oak tree fall down. What do you want to do with this? And you get the opportunity to be part of the solution.
Beautiful.
I'm thinking of the story at the beginning, Jenny, of your older sister being the, the recycling guru. I'm like, wait, we can all, in our loving, annoying ways, like, let's all be the big sisters in the world that are just reminding, like,
Yes.
hey, you know what? This is a thing. Get on board. And I love the notion of, inspiring people to know that there's a better way.
I wanna just share a little story about one client of ours. His name is Cisco Pinedo. He passed away a couple years ago, and he was a really special client. And he owns the furniture company Cisco, CISCO. If you don't know them, check them out. They are a family company. They were like one of the first green furniture companies. He was an incredible man. Their whole family is incredible. And Cisco has also been a big inspiration for us, honestly. in this material reuse journey because he's a furniture guy, and he makes furniture from scratch, but he also is one of the most resourceful people I've ever met. And he reminds me of my sister because he sees an opportunity in every piece of junk, and he calls himself a junker. And I just love that he would wear that name like as a badge of honor. Yeah. Like I think junker like can have a derogatory connotation, but he saw it as a badge of honor, and he would travel around literally looking for junk. And he would, he was big in the scene in Round Top, Texas, which is where this like big antiques festival takes place and like junkers unite. But we worked with him to source and try to reuse materials. And he just saw the beauty and joy in old things and the stories in them. And for him, it was like a divine thing. It was a spiritual thing, material reuse. Mm-hmm. And the stories that materials hold and the histories that they hold. So I think of Cisco and how he was this like beautiful, sophisticated junker. And I think that's what we need to be as landscape architects. Like we need to celebrate the junk. It's like the trash that we've spread all over this world. Let's get spiritual about using it, and see the beauty in it. Yeah, I just wanted a little shout out to Cisco.
Hey, Cisco.
I love it.
Love you. Miss you.
Yeah, I'm inspired.
You follow the threads of humanity, right? This is how we influence each other. We show up in our lives and whatever we're doing. And here was a man that had a passion and was in his realm and crossed paths with you and your cohort.
Yeah.
And this is how it spreads. I'm like looking at a lot of little mushroom mycelial roots around the world. We just keep trying to spread these ideas, and they pop up in really cool ways. Jenny, this is so fun. Yeah. Thank you for your time and willingness to just chat about it. I feel like we have to slow down and consider what we're doing in order for it to take more footing in the real world where we build it.
Well, I just want to say thank you guys. I mean, I learned from you today. I feel really inspired by you. And I'm really excited to hear the rest of your podcasts. I know that you guys are really good at this, and I'm sure there's going to be some really beautiful conversations that come out of this.
Thank you. I can't wait to continue to see what you do and how you continue to grow. And I hope you report back, and I know we'll report back as we learn things, so we all can work together to help shift the industry and shift the standard of landscape architecture and landscape design and landscape construction, and really try to help repair and heal, as we see as your main mission too.
It's my thing.
Thanks, Jenny.
Let's go, girls.